Hello, I'm Shane Bybee. I've worked with students for almost 30 years and spent the last 10 years guiding high school students on their journey to college. One thing I've discovered is that everyone's college experience is different, and that's what this podcast is about. What are the things families really need to know about college? Today, we're meeting with Gabby Smith, Gabby Mykal, as her stage name her artistic name is known. I worked with Gabby. I taught Gabby for a year, her sophomore year of high school, and then I worked with her late in her junior through her senior year in her college admissions. And so, Gabby, I'm excited to talk with you, catch up, to find out what you're doing, and then how you ended up getting there a little bit. So let's start there. Gabby, what are you doing right now? Where are you? What are you working on?
So right now, I just graduated in spring of 2020 from SMU in Dallas, and then um, I went straight into grad school at the California Institute of the Arts in Santa Clarita, California, where I'm getting a Master of Fine Arts in Film and Video Production.
How did you figure? I mean, I know we'll talk more about undergrad stuff. How did you land up in film and video production? How did you discover that as a passion?
So I think when I think about it, it feels both inevitable and also like almost convenient given the current circumstances of the world. So growing up, I kind of think it was always the thing that I wanted to do, but um, growing up in a household where your parents have super practical, straightforward jobs where it's not really about doing the thing that you're super passionate about or that you find super interesting. It's about doing the thing that can make you the most money or that can like support your family the easiest kind of deal. It was never something to really be considered. So I went through in high school, I went through a lot of the phases of being like, oh, I'm gonna be an engineer, and then I'm gonna be this, and then I'm gonna be that. So I went into SMU as actually as a pre-law scholar. Like if I had taken like this one extra course and done one other thing, I would have been automatically admitted into SMU law school because I just like I had this thing because I said that that's what I wanted to do when I first went in. And I do think I'm one of those like not rare cases, but like infrequent cases where the majors that I went in to get are the exact same, but what I wanted to do with them by the end had completely changed because I went in thinking that I would get a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Visual Art. I would get a BS in Financial Economics, and then I would go to law school. And then,
That's a combination we see all the time, right?
yeah, exactly. So then the plan was to go to law school, and then I would go into copyright law, law adjacent to like museums, dealing with like arts institutions, that kind of thing. Um, and then this is actually a funny story. So because I was in this pre-law like scholar, I don't even know what to call it because it wasn't a I don't remember if it was a scholarship, but I didn't follow up on it. But they did used to invite us to these panels that were hosted by the law school. So we were like invited to and like asked to come to these. And they would bring in whether it be like law professors or lawyers that had graduated from SMU law, whatever. And I'd gotten to college and I was like, I don't know about this whole law thing. I think I'm just one of those people who thrives in academic environments. And I know that like I would do well in something as highly competitive as law school, but I don't know how I feel about becoming a lawyer. And then I went to one of these panels one night where after their discussion or whatever, someone asked a question. And the first question asked was, what is the biggest mistake that people make going to law school? And this guy immediately, no hesitation, was like, if you're going just because you're good at school and you know that like you could crush it in a really competitive academic environment, but you're not that passionate about like what it means to like have a law degree and use it, you will burn out and you like it'll be a waste of your time. And I was like, oh no, that is exactly what I was thinking, like verbatim. I was so freaked out. And that night walking back to my dorm, I just texted my mom and I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And she was like, why? Why? um and so
Can't
from
imagine.
there, I was just really easy on myself to know that I was a freshman in college and I had like in my head I had through my freshman and sophomore year to really decide what I needed to be like making moves on. So I was just gonna keep taking my classes, getting those degrees because I knew that those were the things that I was the most interested in, and see what came of it in terms of what I really decided that I wanted to do. And by the time I was going into my junior year, it just became kind of apparent to me that I really couldn't think of anything else that I was interested in doing. Like, I deeply cared about film discourse. I deeply cared about media production and the ways that those things like actually affect people's lives. And also just doing the research to realize that like it's not easy, but there is a track to be followed to do it as your forever job kind of thing. And at that point I was like, you know what? Getting a job in general is like hard across the board. So like what does it mean to make it harder just so I can do something that I really care about? That felt like a trade-off I was willing to invest in. So I got to my senior year and I was like simultaneously applying to jobs and then also applying to grad schools, because I don't know how it is in other fields, but when you're getting an MFA, typically they recommend at least taking a couple years off, because there's kind of this idea that like for whatever you're getting it for writing or for film or whatever, that you should be out of school and like making at your own pace and these kinds of things. But I felt ready to go. Like I was like, I already know what my thesis would be. I already know what I want to do. I already know why I would go. So I just want to go. So I picked my top three, and I just decided that if I got into any of my top three and they thought that I was ready, then I would go. Because even now in my cohort, everyone is like 6 years my senior, like at
Oh,
least.
wow.
So I applied to three schools. I applied to CalArts, Columbia, SAC. I got interviews at CalArts and Columbia. I got offered the spot at CalArts, and I was like, oh, okay, then like I'm gonna go.
Okay.
So that's how I'm here now.
So what degree did you end up getting? Actual your undergrad degree?
I got a BFA in studio art, and I got a BS in economics with
So
financial application.
you did get you did. I mean, because I didn't know if you dropped those whenever you ended up changing from the pre-law, but wow,
No.
visual arts and economics.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm sure Natasha was happy when you said, Mom, I don't think I want to get a job yet. I would love to have a recording of that conversation. Okay, well, I want to talk a little bit, because I told you this, you're one of the stories that I tell people a lot of times, that when we were talking your senior year, fall of your senior year, and you were like, I really want to go back east. I want to go to, I think Northeastern was on your list, and you had all these dreams, and you're like, and if I have to, I'll go to Florida because your parents had some scholarship money or some money put away in the Florida tuition. But I got to get out of the bubble. I got to get out of the South Lake bubble. And then you call me up in April and you're like, hey, I'm going to go to SMU. And I was like, okay, so that's a bigger bubble. That's a thicker bubble than really the South Lake bubble. What was your thought process? How did you arrive at SMU as your the college you decided to go for undergrad?
So I think when prior to this, I was thinking about the biggest things that I thought mattered to then, that I had to learn don't matter, and the things that I thought didn't matter then that I had to learn like do matter.
Love that.
The thing that I kept coming back to is that I was one of those teenagers who was like, I just have to get out. I just have to get out. I have to go. I have to go. I have to go. And I worked my ass off through high school, gave myself mental breakdowns up the wazoo, just because I thought that like if I could strangle myself into getting a 4.0 and I could strangle myself into getting a certain SAT score, that like I would just earn my way out and it would just be like smooth sailing from there. And the thing that I had to learn through the like college application and acceptance process is that stuff, like working for something doesn't mean that all of these extenuating circumstances just go away. Like that college is really expensive. If you're not even if you're going out of state to a state school, college is like really expensive. And like if you live in a family where your parents set you up to go to college one way and then you decide that you want to go another, like it's like you can want it so badly And that doesn't change the fact that like it doesn't make sense to do it. And so for so long, I was so resistant to going to SMU because I knew that everyone was like, oh, it's basically like just going to South Lake High School, but it's bigger and you live together. And I was like, that sounds like a nightmare.
Which is ridiculous, right? Was it at all like that?
Yeah, actually a little bit, but
really?
not like
Really?
not in a terrible way. But and also I can talk about this more later, but I kind of another thing that I learned is that like college is always stressful and hard. And so it's kind of a waste of time to sit there and be like, ugh, if I was at Fordham, I would feel so much better. It's like, no, you would still feel the isolation and you would still feel the stress and you'd still feel all these things. Like the only difference is that you're doing it somewhere like that's not like, I don't know, a city that you've romanticized. But um, so basically, like I was rejecting the idea of going to SMU entirely because it felt like even more intensely of the same of what I'd already been experiencing. And I wanted something else like so much. And my brother was at SMU and like it was so close to home and all of these things. And at the same time, it was the school that offered me the most scholarships, that like actively personally showed the most interest in me. Like I was offered a pretty substantial artistic scholarship and then was invited onto campus by the dean of Meadows, and he showed me around personally, like for the whole day basically, and then sat me down in his office and was like, basically asked what I needed to hear for me to go there. And me being this like just rage-filled, rebellious 17-year-old looked this man in the face and was like, I don't want to go here. I'm here because my mom told me that I have to see this opportunity out because school would be substantially cheaper if I went here as opposed to somewhere else. And I don't really know what to do with that. And he was like, well, where do you want to go? And I was naming all these schools far away. And I was like, you don't understand. Like, I need to get out. I just need to go. And at the time, the dean of the art school in Meadows, this guy, Noah Simblist, said something that I still think about, which is that he was like, here's the thing. I have met so many kids who like right away, they just like, they run away from home as fast as possible because they think that that's what they need, and that's just like something that they this is their first opportunity, so they just have to go. And so many more of those kids, they finish up undergrad and they basically come running back because they didn't like walk before they ran, kind of deal. And so he was like, I think you're underestimating how far away from home you'll feel, and that you're living in this entirely new city, starting this whole new life, and how you'll be able to still take on the support from your family because of the proximity. And by the time you graduate, you will be fully ready to just go wherever you want to go. And basically throughout the course of that conversation, he like convinced me of why I was just being immature and I was being stubborn. Like I didn't want to give up on this idea that I was like, no, like you don't understand. Like I want to go to Fordham Lincoln Center because I've earned getting to have that experience. And then I was like, actually, I can go later. Like it doesn't have to be now. And I might actually get more out of it if I go later. And looking back on it now, like I do feel that I made the right decision. Even things that I didn't like about SMU. I think the fact like of how ready that I felt to come here, like it really did feel like the right time in my life to fully immerse myself in a new place where I'm like 22 years old and now like I truly am ready for that and all that that encompasses, kind of deal.
That's cool. Yeah, so, that's what I was talking about. Like people will say to me, you know, I got to get out of here, and I'm like, you're gonna be out of there. I mean, you're like if you went to SMU or you went to UTA or UTD and it fit you, if that's a good fit for you, UNT, and you got up there, you're far enough away from home that you are away from home. You're in a new place, new people around you. You're close enough that if you need to get home, if Sunday night you want to, I guarantee you, if you call mom up on Sunday night and they're like, dude, I really want your lasagna, mom's going to make that lasagna for you. And you're going to get to have that lasagna that night, like whatever that is. And that's one of the things that I try to stress. I mean, you made a great comment. I love the way, I never really put it this way, but that city that you romanticize, right? Like it's the romantic idea of it. that it's going to be like this. And, I'll be in New York City and I'll be able to do all these wonderful things. And I don't often hear students tell me that SMU was the best deal, was like the least expensive school that they got. So that's awesome that you had a package put together for you that made SMU less expensive. Then you went so you had the California Institute of Fine Arts. How did you choose that particular school?
So it was kind of like a whittling process. So I went, it's actually kind of, it's kind of funny because I felt like I was ready to potentially apply to grad school, like in my heart, but I had taken in so much of people telling me over and over again that like, they're not going to accept you because you're too young. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. Like I'll circle back to it in my life. Um, but at the beginning of my senior year, I started going to the handful of professors that I was like really close with and was like, hey, I just want, while it's still easy for me to just walk into your office because like we're both here all the time before I graduate, I want to like have real conversations about like where like things that I need to know in terms of like, how do you make money doing this? How do you get teaching positions? Like, how do you get seated in festivals? How do you end up on these panels? Like, how do you get guest lecture positions? All this kind of shit. And then along with that, I was like, will you start to like give me schools to look into um, for grad programs that you think I would be a good fit for? Because I am like completely out of my depth. It's not like I have a family history of people who have been like going to like higher arts institutions or something. And um, two of the professors that I like trust a lot and that know me really well, both immediately were like, you should look at California Institute of the Arts because that's like what you do. And I was like, okay, I'll like look into that. And then one of them, this like artist and documentarian, her name's Amber BMAC, was like, and so you're gonna apply when? And I was like, oh, this is just like for the future. And she was like, no, you should just apply now. And I was like, but I'm not ready now. And she just said, then get ready. And I was like, oh, okay. So I literally just like, this conversation happens like the middle of the fall, grad school applications, and like early December to like late December, depending. And also for context, I don't know if I've told you this, that I rode crew in college. Like I walked onto the team and did it all 4 years.
Yeah,
So
I remember you doing it. Yeah.
that consumed a ton of time too. But so basically through our training schedule, even like into winter training, we're working out like 2 times a day and I'm exhausted and I'm like finishing up these grad school applications. And I was like not expecting to get in at all because again, people just been telling me over and over again, like, you're too young and you're not ready. You're too young and you're not ready. But these couple of professors were like, no, you should just do it. And like, even if you don't get in, it doesn't look bad on you because like the expectation is that you'll have to apply a lot to MFA programs. And so basically they were like, it's a win-win because if you don't get in, it's practice for the application and you know what's on it. And then like later when you apply, you'll be more prepared. And if you do get in, then like you can defer or you can just go. And I was like, all right. So I'm just gonna like do this while I also like apply to jobs and do my interviews at like consulting firms and stuff. Like I was like, I'll just throw this in, like we'll see what happens. Um, and then I like got interviews for two of them and I was like, oh, okay, this is like happening. And I did. It's like a weird competitive thing where a lot of schools will set their interview day as the same day so that you have to pick. So I did and I know it's so dumb. So I did the Columbia one over the phone and then I did the Cal Arts one in person just because that was the school that I felt like fit me more than the two. The Columbia interview went so terribly, I can't even describe it to you. I've never felt like anyone hated me more immediately than the three women who interviewed me. It was crazy. And then the Cal Arts one was completely different. Like I spent this for a full day on campus. The interview was only supposed to be like 20 minutes, and these two professors spent like an hour talking to me. And they were just like, it was just so amazing. The program was so amazing. The professors are so accomplished and their work is so interesting and it's like the people that come out of this school are so amazing. And so I was like, you know what, like yeah, we're just gonna do it. So now I'm here.
I do want to come back to the Columbia. I want to find out what made the Columbia one so bad. But that's the process, right? The process helps you figure out the schools that are right for you. You go to
Yeah.
that's you and I talked about it at the time, that back in that April, that going through those interviews, going and talking in it, you find the school that does fit you well. And I wish it was better for more students, because I need to find the exact number on the number of students who change schools. I think the
Yeah.
number of students who change schools is something like 40% or higher. And the number of students who change majors is probably in the 60%.
Oh yeah.
So one question I had that came up. So you said you thought you'd interview for these grad school programs at the same time you were interviewing for consultant jobs. If you hadn't gone to grad school, what would you have done otherwise?
Well, I got in, like, I found out that I got in pretty early in the spring semester, so that was kind of like locked in for me. But otherwise, I had started the process of job applications to like more traditional roles that I could get using my econ degree, basically.
Okay.
So if I hadn't gotten in, then I would have just fully committed myself to that, and I just wouldn't have stopped until I like locked in a job. Although COVID probably would have gotten in the way of that. But so that's why what I was saying earlier about, like, in a way it kind of almost worked out, because I watched a lot of friends who had better GPAs than I did and are definitely smarter when it comes to like their finance degrees or whatever than I did. Um, I saw them get their offers rescinded. I saw them like make it to the last rounds for interviews, and then the companies basically just be like, sorry, never mind, like we can't hire you.
We're
And
freezing hiring, all
so
kinds of stuff.
yeah, like really, really crazy, like deeply unfortunate stuff. Like for like students who, again, it's like they had grinded and grinded and grinded to get to this moment, only for it to be kind of like taken out from under them.
Yeah.
And I was like, as soon as everything with COVID happened and us being taken off campus and all of that, I was like chilling, because I was like, I already got into school. Like I'm done and I'm locked in, and that's what I'm gonna do.
Okay, pandemic. I'll see your lockdown and I'll raise you. All right, so let's talk about Columbia then. What made the Columbia interview bad?
Oh my
You have
God.
to name names, but just what made it bad?
I'm having like war flashbacks. The first thing was
I'm going to trigger some PTSD. Please let me know, and we'll.
it was let's it's it's the whole story is kind of insane. So basically, like it was like weird little things, like there's a kind of passive aggressive energy. And I was taken off guard because going into it, multiple professors had told me that when it comes to these schools, the weeding out process is largely before the interviews. Like you wouldn't even get called for an interview unless they actively were interested in you being in the program. So like go into it with the confidence that it's yours to lose. And so I was thinking that over and over again, that it's like I'm not necessarily convincing them of anything, because they've already like seen my work. They've already done all of that. Now this is like about me and my practice, my internal whatevers kind of thing. And so of course there's like the general questions that you can prepare for in advance, where they'll ask you to put your work in a historical context, or they'll ask you for a list of like artistic references of people that you look to, movements that you look to, whatever. So I get onto this call, and immediately they're like, just so you know, we're on a really strict schedule. So if we cut you off at any point, like just know it's because of that, because this interview has to be like exactly, I don't remember if it was 15 or 20 minutes, but so they say that and I'm like, okay, cool, makes sense, fair. So then we move on. They ask me the question about putting my work in historical context. I give an answer that, like, not even being narcissistic, it was a good answer. It was a solid answer. I had rehearsed it and I did it perfectly. And I was like, yes, that is the answer. And they all just kind of sit there. And then the woman who would be the head of my program was just like, that's interesting, because I just like don't see that in the work. And I was like, would you like me to elaborate? And she was like, no, I just don't see it. And I was like, okay. So then we move on. And we keep having these weird little like combative like
Oh, wow.
moments where they ask me a question and it would be like a personal question, and then they basically would like argue with me on it. And every single time I would be like, do you want me to make it clear to you? And they would just be like, no. And then again, a couple questions later, she interrupts the flow of questions to be like, by the way, like, I didn't mean for that to come across as passive aggressive. I just like don't see it. And I was like, why are you wasting part of this, like, as you said, super strict 20 minutes to bring back up this thing that doesn't matter? Like, it's like when, and now it's like you're like making it weird. And then there was another point where, so I was applying to the art school to be in their moving image program, but then they also have a film school that's separate. Um, and so in the context of when they were asking me things that I'm interested in, one of them was why didn't you apply to the film school when you cite so many influences that are like films or filmmakers? And I was like, because I don't want to be in the film school because I'm not trying to like make traditional narrative films. And they were like, I was like, what do you need? It was a weird, the whole energy was very weird. And then it all culminated in this one question where they asked about like what makes a good and bad critique. And without thinking, I was like, I just think it's really important for people to say exactly what they mean. Like if something is confusing or they don't agree, they should just say that. And we all just kind of looked at each other. And then the interview basically ended. And I was like, oh my God. It was just horrific. Like from beginning to end, I was like, geez, like I don't feel like that was mine to lose at all. I feel like they just hated me from the moment they met me. But I kind of think it was like a mind game, like to see how I do with confrontation. But it also just made me feel like as you were saying before about like as you have these interactions, it becomes clear to you where you feel like you belong and where you don't. Where like coming out of that interview, I didn't even want it anymore because I was like, if this is how you interact with your students, and this is how it's going to go every time we have to have a conversation, like I do not want to be there.
So you said they had seen your work. What kind of work had you done up to that point that you showed them?
So I'd done some writing projects that kind of had like visual components so they were like long form writing things that then would be put into installations. I'd done videos that, kind of across genres. So think some things that maybe could be qualified as like experimental short films, which is like the most pretentious description ever, to like installation type videos, still like narrative based, but all kind of like conceptually dealing with what became like kind of like my thesis in undergrad of dealing with like certain topics like through the mediums. And so that was another thing, that the application process was interesting because each school asked for a different amount of information. Like CalArts let me submit slightly more real time. I got to do like have a higher word count on my personal statement. I got to submit like supplemental work so I could show like other things that I'm interested in doing too. But then Columbia, it was like you could send in no more than 10 minutes for a reel and you got like 350 words of a personal statement, and that was it. And that was like so crazy to me that I was like, and that's how you like just on that, that's how they judge. That's like nothing. But
yeah. So you said so CalArts was some of your visual work that you've done, movies, short films, written work, your personal statement. Was GRE a factor or anything like that a factor at all for your grad school?
No, for MFAs generally, it's not. There was one program that I looked at where it was a joint MFA and MBA program in Chicago, I think. And so for that, you'd have to take the GRE because you're getting an MBA. But I think generally, if you're pursuing a Master of Fine Arts, it's like your portfolio is like the main thing that matters, and not a lot else matters. Maybe the work and how you talk about the work is kind of the only thing that matters.
Cool. That's I'm always curious about how the different schools are handling those things. You know, GRE, GMAT, MCAT, whatever it ends up being. I'm going to put a link into the information about your particular website, so people want to go see your work and see what you did. That's going to be there. Is there any like Instagram place out there or place where Gabby's capturing all of her great work online other than your website?
Not really.
Okay. Well, let me ask, what's the plan after grad school? How long is your MFA program? 2 years?
It's 3 years.
3 years. What's the plan after that?
Basically, the plan after that is to be making things, submitting things to festivals, getting things into festivals, and then doing residencies and kind of like labs, which is you like submit work and then they're like, oh, we like you, we will like sustain your life for a while you like make the thing. That's like one of the models of like how to survive kind of deal. And then also one of the reasons I wanted to get an MFA is because it's a terminal degree, so that means that you can teach in any art school
Okay.
at a college level. So going forward down the line, I like something that I definitely see for myself is that I think it'd be super cool to have a tenure track somewhere, or just to be like a kind of like special topics professor, depending on what I'm up to. But yeah.
You said, so what kind of work do you do other than the show? What are the topics for your films, for your work? I know you're talking to your old English teacher, so that I don't be afraid to, I mean, whatever it is.
I do a lot of work that deals with basically like trying to casually socialize new ways to discuss sexual traumas.
Okay.
In undergrad, one of the biggest bodies of work that I did was dealing with the kind of unique social, frankly, social sexual experience that women have on college campuses, and specifically like Division I athletes who are on women's teams have, and the relationship between that experience and a kind of like casual and frequent negative sexual experience that so many girls go through, especially on college campuses, but just like in young adulthood in general. And trying to like carve out ways to have conversations that don't necessarily have to be this like strict um therapist to victim model, like the ways that it can be therapeutic just to like share these things and acknowledge the ways that like sometimes these things are traumatic, but it's helpful to treat them as if they're funny, or as if they're like stories that create a kind of like oral history between young women. And then getting to Cal Arts, I've kind of progressed that into getting into like this sounds like such heady shit, but
I am
basically
trying to wrap my head around it. I'm like, what is that exactly?
basically like the undergrad work was saying like girls have bad sexual experiences all the time, and we treat it like it's like funny and normal, because in a way like it almost is, because it's so ludicrous how common it is. And now I've like progressed into getting into this idea around like how we interpret sexual fantasies and what that has to do with like the politics of power imbalances in relationships. So like, what does it mean to like want something as opposed to actually doing it? And like, not necessarily what does that say about you, but like, what does that say about like our interpersonal relationships with the people in our lives, kind of deal. So yeah.
You said these are narrative, but are you, I think there's a documentary aspect to what you do as well. I mean, are the two combining?
Yeah, this like the work that I'm talking about right now is definitely more documentary based. Um, it deals with a lot of like both like found footage and then also things that I shoot myself. And then there's kind of this other side of my practice that is narrative based, and those things are like entirely made up, as opposed to the prior works that I was saying where like I would do things like have conversations with friends about these things, record the conversation is like in the piece, or like have these conversations and then transcribe the conversation, and that conversation is in the piece. As opposed to like, I think I deal with similar ideas in my narrative work, but um I'm not as interested in that capacity, like to copy and paste things out of my personal life, because I feel like that's like an abstraction that can become really unhealthy. Um, but there's definitely, it deals with similar ideas. So
Without having to, I mean, is it what drew you to that particular topic?
I mean, personal experiences that I had, and I think also just generally, um, I mean, this is like I love how we've completely gotten away from like talking about like how do you pick the college for you, but like getting back to talking about college, just like I think one thing for everyone to think about before going to college that's good is just generally that like the social climate is like nothing that you've ever been in before and nothing that you will ever be in again. Like the kind of isolation of it, not of you personally feeling isolated, but to and maybe it's different going to a school where like there's not like a campus or whatever, but like when you get onto campus and this becomes like your new social bubble, it's literally like it's like being on it's like at least while you're living on campus, it's like being on like a 2-year game show where like you cannot evade the other contestants. Like you live in this thing together. And I think that's something that like that it's like obviously growing up, you're like, yeah, you go to college and you live in a dorm and there are other people there. But it's like, no, like you live with these people and you see these people and you have social interactions that emotionally impact you and things happen to you and you have fun and you get sad and you have experiences all across the scale of really good to really bad. And it's like, it is like inescapable. Like it's no matter what you do, because you are logistically, you are physically there all the time. And that's why you see so much burnout, like, and stress on people going through their sophomore year, I feel like, because everyone is tired of like living at school. Like you never feel like you get a break because you live at school. And the relief the first time that you get where you're like, oh, I get to leave school and go home to my apartment or whatever is like a visceral relief because it can be so overwhelming that it is like it can be like a deeply socially exhausting experience, which is not to say that I'm like, so don't live on campus, because like it's also really really fun, but like it is like nonstop interaction. Like there's no, it's like you are an active participant in this thing even when you're just like in your room alone. Like no matter how hard you try, you're kind of like stuck participating in the social landscape of college.
And it's so did SMU require that you live on campus for the first 2 years?
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah.
I know a lot of schools still require 1 year. I didn't realize it was 2 for them.
Yeah, I think I feel like I don't know if this is true, but I've heard so many people say that because of the parking situation, they've considered taking it down to 1 year. But yeah, it's 2 years. So it's like it's a substantial amount of time because of course it's like the acclimation of going from like being in high school to
Yeah.
now like 2 years kind of like locked into like living there is a lot. But then I was in RA in my sophomore and junior year too. So that was an interesting experience.
You lived in the dorms for 3 years. You decided to extend that 1 year.
Oh, I stopped my senior year because I just like couldn't do it anymore. And my parents were like, it's okay, you've saved us enough money, you can live somewhere else. I was like, oh thank God.
That's important to know. I mean, I think you're the first person that's really talked about like that social aspect of being in the dorms and stuff. I mean, a couple of people kind of hit on it a little bit, but that's been a good thing to talk about. Okay, so then talked about getting a residency. That's one of my questions for you is like, okay, how are you going to support yourself once you get out of college? But there's residencies, there's festivals. What other things? I got my notes. What other things are going on in the world of Gabby? How many of your friends? So you and Cackley were pretty tight.
Oh yeah,
I haven't followed these out. So you still pretty close with a lot of the people you went to high school with?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. Every time I say this, I feel like people assume that I didn't make friends in college, but it's like I made friends in college, but like I still am like I have a Discord with my 3 best friends from like where I've literally been friends with like these 3 girls since I was like 10 years old, 12 years old. I still talk to Gabby super frequently. I still talk to Hannah George super frequently. But
That's a
it's
couple
like,
of pretty special
yeah,
people to stay friends with too, though.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've gotten really lucky in that like I have a lot of people that I'm like, no, like we are tight, like I love her kind of thing. But because I feel like when I went to college, I was like, I thought that a lot of people were like that they had like really tight knit friends from like growing up or from high school. And then I realized that that's not necessarily like always the case. Like most people that I've met were just kind of like, no, I maybe have like one friend, or like that they just like don't talk to like anyone from high school anymore, which I think is kind of sad, but
It was one of the comments I thought was funny. You'll feel this later on in your life, but what was it that no one talks about? The true miracle of Jesus is the fact that he made 12 friends in his 30s. Like that's been like that's one of the biggest things.
no, honestly, I've seen that super heavily. That's like, this isn't even college related, but like with all my teammates who graduated like ahead of me, the thing that they would talk about is that they were like, if you like you will realize so quickly how much you miss having all these structures in place that make you interact with people like for fun. Like because no one, once you graduate, it's like you go to your job or you like go to school, but like, or if you like go on to school, but even then there's like a different social dynamic where like it's not like people are there to be like, I'm getting my degree and making friends. It's like, no, like you're working your job and then you go home. And it's like, and it's, I feel like that's something that that it's like no one is really like prepared for, especially because the experience of college is so heavily embedded in it being as social as it is, and then that's just taken from you. And it's like the older you get, I feel like the worse it gets, because then it's like people don't want to go through how the effort to like make friends, because it is hard.
Okay, switching topics drastically now, because this is what I do want to ask about this. So you're in the California Institute of Fine Arts is in Santa Clarita.
Yeah,
What part of California is that in?
it's in Southern California. It's like 30 minutes from Los Angeles.
Okay, and what is going on for you right now? Like, what does school look like right now for you?
It's it looks like what I imagine is slightly less hectic than it looked when every teacher was like thrown into having to figure out how to do it. So because also Los Angeles is like the COVID hub of the world. So in a way, like I'm still enjoying it. I wouldn't have gone in the first place. Like I would have just deferred if I thought that it would be a complete waste of time. But I found that even through the first semester, there would be like the classes that I could still thrive in and actually like almost do better in, I think, doing it remotely. And then the classes that just made me wish that I was like dead. And so this semester, now I could just solely pick the ones that I was like, oh, I will thrive in this. I will do well. I will do even better now that I can just sit in my room basically all day and like and work on my things.
So don't you have to tell us the ones that would make you feel dead, but what classes did you take last semester? What were the classes?
So last semester I took post-production sound, I took cinematography, editing. I took this class called Dangerous Filmmaking, taught by this artist called named Nina Menkes, who is basically about how do you create work about things that are like difficult to express and make it in a way that is like not impossible to watch.
Hmm.
I took this class called Aesthetics of Sound and Image, so uh, dealing with ideas around how you use sound adjacent to image to evoke feelings, to create narratives, etc. What else did I take? I feel like I'm forgetting.
What did you take? Is that four classes at one time in a fall semester?
Oh, I took more than that. Right now I'm in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm in 8 classes right now. But
Wow.
also, I mean, I'm out here overloading my schedule, but because I'm just that
Are there going to
person.
be any classes left for you to take in year 3? That would be the next question. So how does your program work then? You have to take, I mean, a lot of programs that you have to get 30 hours plus do a thesis, or 36 hours in a non-thesis. But what is it? How do you get the MFA in what you're doing?
So at Cal Arts, the way that they do it is that there's like a minimum of credit hours, and then going into my second year, I'll have to do my thesis proposal, and then once that gets approved, I spend like the second half of my second year and my third year doing my thesis, and then I turn in my thesis and I get my degree.
Okay.
And there's also like required courses in kind of like the technical realm, more so than you can pick whatever classes you want to take in terms of subject matter, but there are required courses for like cinematography, editing, post-production sound, production sound, whatever, that also have to do with, they like have you knock those out of the way just so one, you can like use those skills to like make your work, and then also so then as a student you can be fully trusted to like use the facilities fully on your own kind of thing, because now you know what you're doing.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that makes sense. And they have a, is it hourly based? Is it just complete these classes? How do they gauge your progress?
there's a minimum of credit hours for each semester, but it's like really low. Like I'm taking I'm
How far
taking like
above
at
it are
least
you?
double that.
Yeah, because 8 classes, man, that's nuts. So
They're
what are you
all
doing
only
right now?
one time a week though,
Oh,
so I feel
really?
like it's okay.
Okay, you're only meeting one time a week right now
Yeah,
for the classes.
some of
Uh,
them have like a ton of work outside of the class, but it's only, you only have to be there like one time.
Are you
So
doing all the work there in your apartment? Is that, I mean, how locked down is Santa Clarita right now?
um I think they just reopened restaurants, though they probably shouldn't have. But I will say CalArts has been they've been doing what they can because they're like at the will of LA County. So we do have equipment checkout. So like if I want a camera, if I want a rig, if I want a tripod, if I want a green screen, if I want installation equipment, whatever. Like I can go and they've created a system of like contactless pickups. So I can get those things, make what I needed to make, and then just like give the stuff back.
Okay.
Um, so for the most part, I am just like I'm just like here in my apartment, but like I'm chilling, I'm enjoying it. Like I like just like having having my own space and like writing and reading all day. It's like kind of a little bit my dream. So it works out.
Very cool. So, all right. Man, I'm out of questions, dude. What else is going on? We're gonna plug the website for you. Um, any big festivals coming up? Any big work you've got that you're really excited about doing?
Um, I don't know. I just started reading something. There's a video that I'm trying to finish.
What are you reading?
It's, hmm?
What are you reading?
Oh, like reading like for fun?
Did you say you started reading something?
Oh, I just started writing something.
Writing something. Sorry,
Yeah.
what are you writing?
I'm writing this again. It's like I was talking to Nora about this the other day. That's another one who I'm still really good friends with.
Yeah,
I was talking to her.
she's on my list. I need to contact to find out what she's up to. But
Yeah, no, she is. I mean, she's one of the smartest people I've ever met. But we were talking about how like it is so difficult to have to talk about having like an artistic practice, a writing practice without sounding like such just a just so annoying. Like it just sounds so annoying. So it sounds annoying to be like, I'm working on this screenplay, but like, so I'm just like, I'm writing this thing about this young woman recovering from an eating disorder who loses her mother suddenly. And instead of dealing with her grief, decides that she no longer believes in death. And her disbelief shows up on her doorstep tangibly as this teenage girl who takes her on this like journey back through her memories and experiences with her mother because they had a strained relationship to remind her that loss is real but it's necessary. And so it's kind of this like surreal like I may destroy you esque thing. But
that is
yeah.
awesome. So, and that's man, to hear you writing that now, know kind of where right now I'm going to go back and look at your multi-genre project from your sophomore year. Because I still have it. I still have it.
Do?
Oh, absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah, I still got it. Not the, I won't have the actual product probably because I gave those back unless I kept them from the classroom. But I definitely have, depending on what you did, I definitely have the Google file.
mhm.
So yeah, somebody a couple months ago, I had one of those because I always get an alert. Like if anybody's gone in and looked at it, it'll tell me in my Google. I'll get an email, and every probably once a quarter, I find out one of my former students has gone back to that work and looked at what they used to do.
I mean, that was a great project.
It was by my two favorite things that I ever assigned, and one of them you guys hated was the REA, but man, the writing got so much better after that. And then the other is the multi-genre project for the end of the year. It was really good.
Yeah. No, you were like you were one of the first teachers that really like believed in me deeply. Like you gave me like a positive complex. Like you made me think that I had something to be confident about, which became really valuable going forward, especially like getting to college where like I thought that it was going to be this magical land where professors were super interested in their subjects and they were like super interested in investing in their students. And then you get there and that's like typically not true at all. And so what I had to hold on to was like the teachers that I had in high school who I was like, he wouldn't have liked me that much if I wasn't actually kind of good, like if I couldn't be better.
So no, you were one of those, you and Nora and a couple others. Like the hard about teaching Nora was like thinking to myself, I've got to give her some feedback. I actually wrote her an apology her junior year. I was like, dude, I did not give you I did nothing to make you better. Nothing, because you were so far beyond me already. So yeah, I want to get Nora in and talk with her and see what she decided to do. But I'm also kind of worried that on the podcast, I don't want people to be intimidated. Like, you have to go to Brown. No, you didn't have to go to Brown. I want to just talk and find out like what people are doing and how they got there. Guy I talked with yesterday, he got an associate's degree and he's like a pilot's instructor here at DFW and stuff. It's some fantastic. The cool stuff is. It's my perspective is really cool on the podcast that I get to look and see. I get to see how many of you guys are doing really cool stuff, and even the ones that I know were kind of turds in high school, like are doing some cool stuff now, and I'm like excited about it. So there's a list if I need. I'm out of. I mean, Maddie Heyman, and I haven't even talked to Andrew Butemeyer about getting him in yet. I need to find out what he's doing. He's doing like film stuff too. I think. I think he's a little more jocular than the stuff you're doing. But I thank you very much for saying something about the topic, because what I would hate to have someone be like, oh, this former high school student's doing this cool video. And it sounds like those videos, like your work is pretty heavy. And so I'm glad we worked out kind of a warning for people that it's going to be pretty heavy work. Like, don't be like to your 15-year-old daughter, don't be like, hey, let's check out this work she's doing before you actually, check out that work she's doing.
I will say like something that's important to me is to not make the idea of the trauma or the experience like spectacle. So like in the grand scheme of my work, there's like very limited profanity. There's never like anything shown that is like even remotely graphic. It's all suggestion, and it's all grounded in like things that actually happen. And so in that way, like, again, it's like not saying like, oh yeah, like a 15-year-old girl should like watch watch a video about like whatever, but I don't know, just that it's like they're not it's like it sounds more intense than it actually, well, it reads intensely, but then the work actually has in terms of formal components. And then a lot of the other aspect of my work is like a lot of it is like funny and like kind of like casual and sarcastic and like not heavy at all. Like it's just me talking about like the Bachelor and Bachelorette and like what I think that says about like romantic landscapes, like or like talking about like what it means to like feel really close to your phone and like not as close to people, or like things like that. So cool. It's like a wide plethora, but yeah.
Well, I know that I'm one of these, when from the outside looking at what you were doing, I mean, I remember seeing your freshman year of college, you were doing video, you were doing films. I remember you doing a film. We talked about it that next summer, like you had already started making film at that point. You probably were doing it before you graduated from high school too. Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much for agreeing to sit down and give me an hour of your time. And
yeah, of course.
I hope people will find it, because again, you're doing something very different than what a lot of people are doing. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing the next work that you do.
Thank you. It was great to talk to you. When I turned on Yazan's podcast episode, The first time that you started to talk, I was like, oh my God, I forgot that you sound how you sound. Like, I was like, I don't know. I had like this weird like disconnect in my brain where I was like, oh my God, is that his voice?
I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad
No, it
thing.
wasn't like that. I made it sound worse than it is. It was just like an observation where I was like, wow, like it's been so long
Yeah.
since I've like spoken to you that I don't know what I was like thinking of you when I thought of you, but it like wasn't you.
And the digitized, we'll say it's the digitized voice is the problem.
Mm,
All right. Well, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing the work you do.
thank you.